In India, in the past, the Devadasis were a very important part of the Hindu society. They were important in terms of complete education in music, literature, dance, and thus could serve in any religious function or in temple institutions. In India, the practices originated and developed during the early medieval period, around the 15th century. There is historical evidence, mythological evidence before that, and we have large number of inscriptions which give us a lot of information regarding the existence of institutions of the Devadasis. From 9th century onwards, there is clear evidence of dancing girls in the service of temple, from which this tradition or pratha or parampara emerged. It is believed that a class of temple dancing girls came about due to expansion of temple system which came out of the Bhakti movement. Once a king became popular and his boundaries extended, then patronage to arts and temples also extended. Traditional forms which came out of divine origins were performed as service for the divine and formal setting in the temples. Dancers thus dedicated primarily for propitiating gods or devas, and thus the concept of Devadasis. These were women of complete knowledge, as I said, in Sahitya, Sangeeta and Shastra, and knew many art forms pertaining to Alankar Shastras or decorative arts, Aharya, and thus were completely dedicated to profession of entertainment, worshipping and celebrating of gods. The temple artists had different duties. Rajdasis danced before the sacred flagstaff. Alankaradasis performed at the social functions. Devadasis danced regularly in the temples. Swadasis performed on special religious occasions. Pushpanjali Dasis danced with flowers were offered to the deity. Others fanned the image of God, lit the lamps, performing many of the duties of the priests. Musicians who accompanied them in the main, conducting with cymbals to maintain rhythm and overall presentation, were called Nattuvanars. Belonging to the Isai Velalar community, they were the fulcrum of the group and as head maintained structure and substance. We learn from inscriptions that 1,000 years ago, Nattuvanars used to train the Chola princes Kuntavai. During the time when dance was performed in the temples by Devadasis, the music instruments Nadaswaram and Tawil were used, and to this day they are played at religious and auspicious ceremonies in South India. The first reference to dancing girls in temples is found in Kalidasa's Meghadutam. Most of the Puranas contain references to dancing girls, so most probably the custom of dedicating girls to temples was common during the 6th century. Puranas even recommended enlisting the services of singing girls for worship at temples. In her book Nitya Sumangali, Devadasi tradition in South India, Saskia C. Kersenbohm story says, when a girl would reach the age of 16, an application to be allowed to become a Devadasi would be made to the king of Karvetinagar. Such a petition would have to be countersigned by 10 priests and 10 Devadasis. After permission was granted, an auspicious day would be fixed for the air braiding function. 5 days before the actual Murtirai, a Gaja Puja would be held to conclude the girls' training in dance. From the temple, they would bring the katari, the sword, spear or trident to the home of the girl. All traditional marriage rituals would be performed. The girl would then give a dance performance. The girl would be accompanied to the temple. There she would dance the Pushpanjali, followed by a full dance concert. Hereafter, the mark of the Trisula would be branded on her upper arm. After 1 month, the Devadasi was free to decide about her future. Devadasis were trained artists. So apart from their temple duties, they also performed dance and music at private functions like marriages. Bharatanatyam developed from Sadhi dance, Chinnamelam and Dasiyatam, and Odissi developed from the Gotipua and Mahari dances. Both are modern incarnations of the dance of the Devadasis of Tamil Nadu and Orissa, respectively. The contribution of Devadasis to music is also significant. Some famous singers like M.S. Subbalakshmi trace their lineage to the Devadasi community. In Tamil Nadu, those who danced in temples were called Devadasis. Local kings often invited temple dancers to dance in their courts, the occurrence of which created a new category of dancers, Rajdasis, and modified the technique and themes of the recitals. Those who gave dance performances in festivals elsewhere came to be known as Sevadasis. A Devadasi had to satisfy her own soul while she danced unwatched and offered herself to the god. But the Rajdasi's dance was meant to be an entertainment. Kerala history has many examples of beautiful and attractive ladies of the Devadasi sect being accepted as consorts by kings. It is said that the Devadasi Cherukarakutatati, Kandiyu Tevichitichi, Unni, and others had been queens. Famous dancers like Uniyachi, Uniyati, Unichirutevi, and others are described as expert exponents of the Devadasi art attached to Shiva temples and residing in their precincts. Most of the stone inscriptions containing references to Devadasis in Kerala have been discovered from Shiva temples. Kulasekara Perumal, the ruler of Kerala in the 9th century AD, dedicated his own daughter to the Sri Rangam temple. So it was not uncommon for maidens from royal or even Brahmin families to become Devadasis. By the end of the 10th century, the total number of Devadasis in many temples was in direct proportion to the wealth and prestige of the temple. During the medieval period, they were regarded as a part of the normal establishment of temples. They occupied a rank next only to priests, and their number often reached high proportions. For example, there were more than 400 Devadasis attached to the temples at Tanjore and Travancore. Devadasis reached the height of glory under Chola kings between the 9th and 12th centuries AD. There were about 430 dancers in the Tanjore temple. Their names and addresses have been recorded in the inscriptions. They were paid out of a corpus fund. During the 5 pujas in the temple, all 430 dancers danced and worshipped Lord Shiva, accompanied by 150 musicians. Some Devadasis were named after saints, while others were given the title Tarlekolli to denote that they were experts in dance. There were even instances of kings so pleased with their dance so as to name a village after Devadasi. Innumerable inscriptions from Chola times tell us of the philanthropy of Devadasis. They erected new shrines, rebuilt old and crumbling ones, planted some of the roofs with copper, gold, and brass. They commissioned master sculptors to make gold and bronze images of gods, goddesses, and saints to be installed in temples. Devadasis, who had specific role to play in the festivals and processions of temples, donated lands to ensure these celebrations. The wealthier Devadasis donated jewelry, lamps, plates, and bells made of solid gold for temple services. When Maharaja Sayaji Rao married a princess from Tanjore in 1883, 2 Devadasis came as part of the dowry to the Baroda Darbar along with a full troupe of musicians. Since Devadasis were dedicated to temples, they were understood to be married to God and hence could not marry ordinary human beings. If they wished an alliance to continue their art, they could have liaison with either with the temple priest or representative of God on earth, or the temple patron, local zamindar, since he too paid
for and maintained all services to God. Male offsprings generally born out of such union were trained in music, hence became musicians and Nattuvanars, and female offsprings were trained in dance. Thus, the twin system of Devadasi and Nattuvanars continued under the patronage of temples and local zamindars. Their world was the temple, and after entertaining gods, they entertained their patron and other important dignitaries. In initial years of this parampara, the women were of great repute and intellect. They were treated as Sumangali, always married, hence auspicious, since they were never widowed, being married to God to who never dies. The Devadasis were treated like quasi-royalty and put on pedestal by the society for their learning and wisdom. Many famous temples had famous dancers attached to them. Tanjore, Chidambaram, Kumbakonam, Madurai, Kanchipuram were famous temples of learning and had leading practitioners for the dance and music. The term Devadasi is of Sanskrit origin. Though it was commonly used, the institution and the women in profession were known locally by different Maharajas as slaves or servants of God. In Travancore region as Kudikars, those belonging to the house. In Andhra as Dogams or Sanis. In Kannada speaking areas as Basavis or Jogatis. In Goa and West India as Bhavins or Bhavanis, meaning beautiful wanton women. In Maharashtra, other than coastal area, as Muralis, Jogatis, Jogtinis and Aradhanis. And in Marwar as Bhaktinis and Bhaktan, wife of a Bhagat or holy man. Devadasis are also known locally by the names of Nayakasani, Rangasani, Gangasani, Muthukati Kondavallu, Davrasule, Kasabi, Patradavalu, Jogati, and so on. The rise and fall in the status of Devadasis can be seen to be running parallel to the rise and fall of the patronage systems which were connected to the Hindu temples. When a kingdom fell on bad days due to invaders from West Asia or attained its downfall at the hands of internal warfare through 2nd century onwards, lot of temples lost support of the kings and thus the patronage was affected. This affected especially the northwestern borders of the country and spread throughout the whole of country, reaching South India, thereby affecting not only North Indian temple but also South Indian temples. The temples became poorer and lost all the patronage as the kings themselves didn't have kingdoms or lost the battles, and in some cases they were totally destroyed. Thus, the Devadasis, once a glorious artists, were forced into a life of poverty. Towards the 18th century, patronage to temples started to decline due to long colonial rule. All the foreigners who came to India, the Britishers, the Dutch, the Portuguese, and many others, the French, who then took over temple and the administration, and thus further marked the abolishment and fall in the patronage of tradition. Thus, due to lack of patronage, artistic activity also suffered. Slowly, the Devadasi fell on bad days and had to seek other trades to survive, and some also took to the oldest profession in the world, thus gaining ill repute, bad name, not only for themselves but also for the art form they represented. Soon enough, the entire Devadasi system came under legal disputes owing to long colonial history under British India. This is long history which we will take up in other segments and classes. The first anti-notch and anti-dedication movement was launched in 1882. Their main aim was to do away with this system. Reform lobbyists were drawn mainly from missionaries, doctors, journalists, and social workers. They urged the abolition of all ceremonies and procedures by which girls dedicated themselves as Devadasis of Hindu shrines. They organized seminars and conferences to create a public opinion against the Devadasi system. In the latter part of 1892, An appeal was made to the Viceroy and Governor General of India and to the Governor of Madras. This appeal also defines the position of the anti-Nautch movement. Some journals and newspapers like the Indian Social Reformer and Lahore Purity Servant supported the reformist or abolitionist movement. The movement initially concentrated on building public opinion and enlisting members to refuse to attend Nautch parties as well as to refuse to invite Devadasis to festivities at their homes. Around 1899, the anti-Nautch and Puritan movement turned its attention to stopping dedications. The anti-Nautch movement paved the way for anti-dedication movement. Prominent social thinkers questioned the practice of Devadasi system and pleaded for its abolition. In 1929, a member of the legislature, Dr. Muthulakshmi Reddy, launched an anti-Nautch campaign demanding the demolition of the Devadasi system. Despite protests by E. Krishna Iyer, a leading barrister, and art lovers of Madras, Dr. Reddy and her anglicized women's leagues managed to effect crippling legislation against the Devadasis in 1927, followed by total abolition in 1947. On January 27, 1948, the Fort St. George Gazette created the Madras Devadasi Act 16 in legal section. Excerpts from it: dancing by a woman with or without kumbhaharti, pot-shaped arti lamp, in the precincts of a temple or other religious institution, or in any possession of a Hindu deity, idol or object of worship installed in any such temple or institution, or at a festival or ceremony held in respect of such a deity, idol or object of worship is hereby declared unlawful. Any person who performs, permits, or abets temple dancing is punishable with imprisonment for 6 months. A woman who takes part in any dancing or music performance is regarded as having adopted the life of prostitution and becomes incapable of entering into a marriage, and the performance of any marriage ceremony, whether held before or after this act, is hereby declared unlawful and void. When the Madras Devadasi Act took effect, 35,000 temples of Tamil Nadu barred all women performers, whether they were Devadasis or not. In 1930, with effort of Muthulakshmi Reddy, the Madras Legislative Council banned the Pottu ceremony, the processes of dedication of the Devadasi to the particular deity in Madras Presidency or modern-day Tamil Nadu. The first legal initiative to outlaw the Devadasi system dates back to the 1934 Bombay Devadasi Protection Act. In 1947, the year of India's independence, the Madras Devadasi Act, Prevention of Dedication, outlawed dedication in the southern Madras Presidency. The Karnataka Devadasi Act of 1982, Prohibition of Dedication, Andhra Pradesh Devadasi Act, Prohibition Dedication of 1989 were implemented to abolish the Devadasi system of India. The Devadasi system was outlawed in all of India in 1988. Saride Manyakma was initiated into the two temples of Madana Gopal Swami and Rukmani in Balupadu at the age of 11. But left in the lurch by the Devadasi Act of 1947, she struggled for 25 years in poverty. She still, as a few other Devadasis, were discovered by Nataraja Ramakrishna at a convention in 1972 and brought to his institute to teach Abhinaya. In the 19th century and the early years of the next, it was customary for Dorai Kanu, the hereditary Devadasi of the Kapaleswar temple, to accompany the procession at the annual festival. She would be dressed as Bhikshatana, and a large group would follow her as she danced at particular points in the procession. Doreikannu's daughter was the famed Mylapore Gauri Amma, who continued the dance tradition at the temple and during the Bhikshatana procession. Gauri was guru to Bala Saraswati and later taught Rukmini Devi Arundel also. Following the disenfranchising of Devadasis and the revoking of their hereditary rights, Gauri Amma was evicted from the house given to her by the temple. She managed to make both ends meet by teaching dance to people whom she felt would benefit by it. With that ended what must have been a colorful adjunct to the Bhikshatana procession. Realizing that Hindu dance and music faced extinction, the Music Academy of Madras reacted to the Devadasi Act by getting Sadir renamed as Bharatanatyam and started sponsoring public performances for Devadasis expelled from temples in 1931. Gauri Ammal danced at the Music Academy in 1932 and 15-year-old Bala Saraswati danced the following year. Pioneers like Madam H.P. Blavatsky and Colonel H.S. Olcott, the founders of the Theosophical movement, undertook an extensive tour of South India and propagated the revival of the Devadasi institutions and associated art of Sadir. In 1882, the Theosophical Society of India set up its headquarters in Adyar, Chennai, with the goal of working towards the restoration of India's ancient glory in art, science and philosophy. The revival of Sadir as Bharatanatyam by Theosophical Society was largely due to the efforts of Rukmini Devi Arundel, an eminent theosophist, and E. Krishna Iyer, an eminent barrister and dance activist. Rukmini Devi changed the dance repertoire to exclude pieces perceived as erotic in their description of deity. The product of this transformation was Bharatanatyam, which she then began to teach professionally at a school she established in Madras called Kalakshetra. It was her endeavor to remove the Devadasi dance tradition from the perceived immoral context of Devadasi community and bring it to the upper caste performance milieu. The revivalists tried to represent the idealistic view of the institution of Devadasi. According to their view, it was a model of the ancient temple dancer as pure, sacred and chaste women as they were originally. They stressed that the dance of Devadasi was a form of Natya Yoga to enhance an individual's spiritual plane. The revivalists wanted to preserve the traditional form of Sadir dance by purifying it. As a consequence of purification, some modifications were introduced into the content of the dance, which was strongly criticized by dancer Bala Saraswati and other prominent representatives of the traditional Devadasi culture. The revivalists mostly belonged to the Brahmin-dominated theosophical circles. Many Brahmin girls started to learn the dance from Devadasis. Devadasis as temple singers and dancers were prevalent in the temples in Goa, Thanjavur, Puri, Mathura and Mysore, etc. Even till recent times, post-independence, some Devadasis taught music and dance in South India. Towards the decline of the system, many prominent dancers of today learned from T. Bala Saraswati, Mysore, Gauri Ammal and Swarna Saraswati.
The term Nattuvanar connotes a man who accompanies the Devadasi in the capacity of a dance master, music conductor and vocal percussionist, the one who sets the structure and recites. In pre-modern South India, particularly among the Tamil-speaking Devadasi communities, the Nattuvanar would train the dancer and also join her during the performance by reciting vocalized rhythms called solukattus or solukattus. The primary visual marker of the cymbals was the talam, which was used by the Nattuvanar, which is two small pair of metallic cymbals made of 5 metals and had a resonating sound which supported the footwork executed by the dancer. Some of the most famous Nattuvanars served in this Tanjore court were ancestors of the famous 4 brothers we spoke of the Tanjore Quartet. And before that, the Nattuvanar tradition itself had evolved from within the Devadasi community. The male offsprings of the Devadasi often took to learning music and reciting, and thus learning the structure of the dance form and its grammar. There were also composers who interacted with Devadasis in the 18th and 19th centuries. Thus, the Devadasi community had parallel support system in the Nattuvanar community, which were the offsprings from within the Devadasi community and undertook to be the leaders of the community as male authority. The systems of patronage also supported this, and thus a new community of practitioners were created, the Nattuvanars and the Devadasis, the dancers. And as urban practitioners, when they left villages and came to the cities and expanded the repertoire to create new items or new diversions and margams, these then got to be known formally as the contemporary form we know through Bharatanatyam today.